to so many. And this line is also what's engraved on this necklace that my mother made for me after Dad died. And the words are this: live simply, love your family, love your friends as your family, and may there always be music. Thank you.
My mom was incredibly kind. She had a warmth about her that I think, biased as I may be, was very rare. And anyone that knew her just knew her as one of the sweetest people they'd ever known. And so I grew up in an environment where I knew I was loved, and then I knew that she wanted the best for me my entire life, and that she would do whatever she could as a mom to guide and just know that there was a foundation there. And I think that has been important throughout my entire life, because she stopped working and she stopped focusing on herself to give, and frankly, give energy and effort to me.
Now, Kit Martin's family has also stood by him throughout this arrest and trial. They were in court during his trial and were present at today's sentencing as well. Martin also had a show of support outside the courthouse in Kentucky, where about a dozen supporters held a rally on his behalf.
Free Kit now! Free Kit now! Free Kit now! Free Kit now!
Now, he won't be free anytime soon, since Martin was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. The only shot Martin has at freedom is if his conviction is thrown out on appeal. Now, in an exclusive interview with Court TV, Kit Martin denied any role in the murders, and he laid out his theory about who actually committed the crimes. Let's take a listen.
I didn't realize at the trial, but the discovery doesn't go to the jury. I thought it all did. They don't get any of that. So I was reading through information that they didn't have, and just reading through that as just a person making notes and comparing things, it became pretty obvious that this was several people were probably behind this, not just one,
What makes it obvious to you?
Well, first of all, like, Calvin was killed with a large caliber weapon, and the shots were very sloppy. He was hit all over the body. He was apparently beat up before he was shot, so somebody that he trusted got close to him. Somebody that his dogs trusted got close to him, because nobody else, there's only a very small group of people that would fit that category. And obviously I wasn't one of them. Somebody got close to him that he trusted, they beat him up, and then they shot him, but it was very sloppy, and it was a large caliber weapon. When you look at Pam and Ed's murders, those were very precise head and brain shots. Somebody who really knew what they were doing, a really expert shot. So different weapons, different skill sets. And then you had all these bodies that were apparently moved around and stuff like that. Ed was a big man. That didn't come out in the trial either, but Ed was like, I don't know, 6'2", 6'3", probably 200 some pounds. I'm 5'8", 160, 165 pounds, with a bad back, bad neck, bad knees, heart condition, all from 30 years of military service. I have a ton of injuries that also did not come into the trial, but I have a stack of medical records of injuries that I've gotten from my service in the military and deployments. I can't lift 50 pounds without my back going out, and my back can go out at any time for no reason at all, just turn the wrong way, and I'm paralyzed for a week or two. I'm not capable of what happened here. I'm capable of doing what happened there. The way that it happened with the SWAT raid and the military stepping in, they were obviously biased right off the bat. And when you go through the discovery, you can see that over and over again, the detectives went, talked to the JAG, went, talked to CID, went, talked to a JAG, whatever. Every time they did that, they went immediately to the Phillips house and talked with the son and the sister. And so there's no way that they weren't biased. And when you look at their TV interviews that they did, you can see the bias there as well. So I understand, they wanted somebody to blame, they wanted some sort of conviction.
So I've been keeping a tally of people that you've said have either vendettas or have threatened you. It includes your ex-wife, includes the JAG officer, current governor, local officers, CID, and members of the Phillips family. Is all of that really possible?
You don't have to take my word for it. You can look at the documentation. I'm just telling you what the documents show. You know, it's all documented.
So Christian Kit Martin sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. And Kit Martin is the topic of our Court TV Talkback question today. Do you believe him when he says that he is innocent? Find Court TV on social media and leave your answer. We'll have your answers later this hour. And then we'll get you up to speed on the trial of an Ohio man accused of killing 9 people by setting their homes on fire. And finally, 3 police officers charged in the death of George Floyd want to keep cameras out of the courtrooms in their upcoming trial. We'll tell you all about that coming up. So keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice. On day 4 of Ohio versus Stanley Ford, witnesses heard more testimony about the character of Stanley Ford, and they heard from fire investigators about how they determined that the fatal fires were set on purpose. Stanley Ford could face the death penalty if he's convicted of murder in the deaths of 9 of his neighbors. He's accused of setting 3 different fires, including 1 car fire and 2 fatal house fires in Akron, Ohio. And today, this jury heard the words of Tom Hughley. He lived in the basement of one of the homes that caught fire and was known to cut grass in the neighborhood. He has since died of natural causes, but he testified at Ford's previous trial prior to the mistrial being declared, and his testimony was read into the record in court today.
As far as you're aware, we talked about everybody in the neighborhood, and you indicated that you aren't aware that anybody that Lindell, Jeannie, or you were having problems with in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
Is there anybody outside, we're not talking about Mr. Mclemore, other than had him, was there anybody else that you were aware of, any one of them people that lived in the house at 719 Fultz were having issues with?
No.
And when the police came to you that night, did you tell them who you thought had done?
Yes, I did.
Had committed this fire?
Yes, I did.
Who did you tell them you believe did this?
The man across the street.
Right now you just used your thumb to point.
Yes, sir.
Who did you point at?
There, he.
You can move the screen. You can move that screen if you want.
Yeah, I know. I forget. Stan.
So Stan is the fellow that you said lived on the corner, 2 houses there, that you had been having trouble with.
Yes, sir.
You see him here in the courtroom today?
I do.
Point him out and describe what he's wearing.
He's wearing a blue shirt, wearing glasses. That's him.
Your Honor, we ask the record reflect the witness has identified Mr. Ford.
All right, let's get you caught up on all of today's biggest moments in court and our debrief. And for that, we turn to Court TV crime and justice reporter Joy Lim-Nakrin, who is live now in Akron, Ohio. Joy, tell us about Tom Hughley and his role in this case. It seems like he had some pretty important testimony there.
This case, and again, he is the only surviving victim involved in this case, and he passed away in December of 2020 due to natural causes. But we are hearing from him in the form of prior testimony during the first trial during 2020 is when it happened, and of course that was declared a mistrial because of coronavirus issues, and here we are again. But he's really important to this case because some of the testimony that we heard today was that Ford took issue with him personally, Thomas Hughley, that's what he said, and even jumped on him, accusing him of breaking a window is what his testimony states. Hughley also believed that Gloria Hart had been in an altercation with Ford as well. That is the testimony we heard today. However, although all of that helps the prosecution, there was one piece of testimony that came out on direct examination, which was very helpful to the defense, and that is regarding a man who he identified as Mclemore, who he said started a first fire at the home of Lindell Lewis and Gloria Jean Hart. Let's listen.
All right, so Lindell, or excuse me, Mclemore would show up at all different hours?
Anytime.
And that angered Lindell, is that what you're saying?
It didn't anger him, you know. He just get tired of it. He was a nuisance, I guess.
So was Mclemore upset with Lindell?
Yeah,
Because why?
because he wouldn't give him no money when he would come over there to get it. I mean, late at night, he ain't getting up out of the bed and giving nobody nothing, you know.
Okay. And as a result of Mclemore getting upset or angry with Lindell, did he do anything?
Yeah, the first fire come from Mclemore.
What was the fire of?
In the backyard, he got the gas can, threw it on the van, and threw it on the house. Well, when I got up, the fire was already out. I didn't know nothing about the fire. He said, I already put the fire out by now.
So Mclemore gets mad, goes in the backyard, gets a gas can, pours it on the side of the house and
And on his van.
on Lindell's van
Yeah,
and lights it on fire.
yeah, he lights it.
And but it goes out,
No, it burned up the van
burned the van.
and the house and the side of the house. He put that vinyl stuff on it. That's new stuff. Yeah.
Do you remember when that happened?
2 or 3 years ago, I guess. It could be longer than that.
And of course, all of that really helpful to the defense's argument that there are other suspects who were not adequately investigated and who could be responsible for these crimes, Michael.
Now, Joy, the defense really has tried to raise the specter that someone else actually set these fires. How is that effort going overall in their cross-examinations?
I mean, certainly it was helpful in this case. During cross-examination, the defense was able to draw out this issue of this person, Mclemore, who they paint as a suspect, who they point out was not actually arrested, and again, they argue was not properly investigated. But the defense is also, trying to has tried multiple times to sever these various counts. They filed another motion again today. They filed several over the course of these proceedings to sever these counts, separate the distinct events, and they say that due process requires a severance of the charges because we're talking about 3 different incidents from 2016 to 2017, 3 different fires. And they say that joining all of these counts together is greatly prejudicial to their client. However, ultimately, the judge did side with the state on this, who argued that all the incidents, should be joined because they're doing so is simple and direct, and there is a shared common feature connecting all of these incidents. Ultimately, the judge did rule in favor of the state in this, presumably in the interest of judicial economy.
All right, now the jury also heard another bit of testimony read into the record from another key player in this case. What can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so that is Chester Williams, and Williams was not able to be here because of a medical condition. But we heard his testimony, which is so central because he said on the stand that he installed security cameras pointing towards Lindell Lewis's home, on his own home, on the porches of his home, because he was worried about Lindell Lewis. And he said specifically because he was worried about conflicts between Lindell Lewis and the defendant, Stanley Ford. And of course, the video captured on his cameras was used in the investigation to ultimately arrest this defendant, Stanley Ford. So let's go ahead and listen to a clip of that testimony.
Mr. Williams, this camera right here, as shown in State's Exhibit number 26, can you tell the jury why you placed that camera on the front of your porch?
Well, to my knowledge, I put it up there to try to help Lindell out, thinking I can catch anybody messing with Lindell.
Why did you feel the need to help Lindell out?
Because they got in an argument, him and Stan.
Him and Stan were getting into arguments?
Yeah,
So you put that camera there on your porch?
right.
Mr. Williams, after Lindell's house caught on fire, did someone come to your house to look at your cameras?
What you mean by someone?
A police officer. Did a police officer come to your house to look at your cameras?
Well, it was two police officers.
Okay,
Sergeant Gump.
okay.
I don't know the other guy name. I knew Sergeant Gump pretty good.
You knew him pretty good?
Yeah, because he came to the house 3 or 4 times.
So again, the fact that that video that was on that was obtained from cameras on his porches was used to arrest the defendant, and the fact that he's now testifying, he was testifying that he installed those cameras because he was concerned about Ford attacking these victims, essentially targeting these victims, certainly a very, very strong for the prosecution there.
Yeah, the prosecution's certainly building a pretty strong case here. So what can we expect tomorrow, Joey, when court resumes?
So we expect to hear from another fire investigator who was involved in searching the properties in question, and we also expect to hear from a coroner taking the stand as well, Michael.
All right, Joy Nakrin, thank you so much for that report. Truly appreciate it. I'll let you go now. I want to bring in my guest for this hour, former Department of Justice senior attorney and former federal prosecutor and now current federal executive clemency attorney, Tammy Allison. Tammy, great to see you. Thanks for being on the show tonight.
Thank you for having me, Michael.
All right, I want to get your thoughts on the Stanley Ford case. You know, he paints an interesting character. On the one hand, you hear about a guy who's nice to folks in the neighborhood, but on the other side, you hear a guy, if you get on his wrong side, you're going to have some problems.
Yes, and I think that that's common with a lot of people in a lot of neighborhoods. Neighbors typically tend to have beef with one another, so I don't think that that is necessarily a strong argument for the prosecution to make. I think a stronger argument would be to pinpoint the specifics with the individuals that he's had arguments or issues with. And I think that the prosecution has done a good job at laying that out. However, the testimony that we've heard of the gentleman who was the lone survivor of the 3 fires, and his testimony that was read on the record does raise that doubt to help the defense show that Stanley Ford possibly could be innocent in any one of these arsons that was committed that resulted in the death of 9 individuals. So I think that the defense motion that was denied by the judge, as far as severing the cases for each one of the individual arsons and the individuals who passed away, I'm not sure how that's going to look with the motion for a new trial and possibly even on appeal.
Well, let me get your thoughts about that, because I find it a very interesting argument. I do know that there's a nexus between the 3 of them, and there's a lot of similar evidence. But I also think that there is a certain amount of prejudice that comes along with bringing all these fires together. Do you think it outweighs the probative value? That's the real question.
I think that any individual has the right, the constitutional right, to due process for each and every separate allegation that they are facing. That's something that I talk about a lot with the criminal justice system and the need for reform. For this, for Mr. Ford to be facing 9 individuals who died in 3 different arsons, despite the judicial economy argument, he still deserves due process. And it's my opinion that each one should be severed and each one should be heard before separate juries so that he has his constitutional rights honored.
You know, I can't say that I don't agree with you here. I think it's an interesting issue and one that's certain to come up on appeal. The other thing I wanted to point out was something you said earlier about a lot of folks in neighborhoods have beef, right? And kind of if you live in a neighborhood with folks are kind of close together, you know a Stanley Ford, right? He's the guy who's always sort of sticking up for folks and maybe has a little problem with a couple of different people. And I'm wondering, without a real triggering event, you know, something that they can clearly say this was something that goes so far, so deep, that triggered him to kill all these people, I'm wondering if that presents a problem for the prosecution.
I think it does present a problem. In addition to Mclemore having beef with someone else and him burning something down, and, you know, we heard the testimony that a van caught on fire that was not Stanley Ford. So I think it presents a huge problem without specifying exactly who he had issues with, why he had issues, that individual's response to his issues. And I think at this point, again, that goes back to what we were talking about, severing these separate incidences so that he is able to not only have his constitutional rights of due process preserved, but also so that we can hear the clear story from beginning to end. And like I like to say, connect the dots.
There you go. Great, great, great stuff, Tammy. Truly appreciate it. Can't say I disagree with you. All right, we're going to take a quick break right now. When we come back, the 3 former police officers awaiting trial in the death of George Floyd's trial are pushing to get cameras out of their upcoming trial. We'll have the details on that coming up, so keep it right here on Quick TV.
We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. Verdict count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. Same caption, verdict count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m.
Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. It has been more than 4 months since Derek Chauvin was convicted of killing George Floyd in May of 2020. Today, we have an update on the trial for the remaining 3 officers involved. Now, last month, lawyers for 2 of those officers, Thomas Lane and J. Alexander King, filed a motion to exclude cameras inside the courtroom. And today, the 3rd defendant in that trial, Tutao, joined that motion. Now, the move comes as a bit of a surprise, as the defense was originally in favor of cameras in the courtroom, but they have now changed their tune, claiming it will hamper their client's ability to get a fair trial. In response, the media coalition, of which Court TV is a part, filed a memorandum in support of broadcasting the proceedings. In yet another twist, the prosecutors, who originally opposed cameras in Chauvin's case, have now filed their own motion supporting cameras. In their motion, the state said the following: though the state originally opposed such coverage, the state now acknowledges that the court's audiovisual order, along with the court's other prudent measures, successfully protected jurors, witnesses, attorneys, the defendant, and court personnel in State versus Chauvin in the midst of a deadly pandemic. Now, the trial for the 3 remaining officers is scheduled to begin in March of 2022. All right, let me bring in my guest for this hour, the wonderful and talented Joe Tamburino. Haven't seen you for a while. Great to see you again. Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having me on, Michael. Nice seeing you.
All right, so where do we begin on this? There's so much to discuss here. Joe, first and foremost, though, I want our viewers to understand that Court TV broke ground with this trial because the de facto situation in Minnesota was cameras were not allowed in the courtroom, correct?
That is correct. Cameras are not allowed in the courtroom unless both parties agree. Except in the Chauvin case, Judge Cahill found exceptional circumstances and used a specific rule of general practice 1.02 that basically gives the judge the ability to overrule that in very limited situations.
All right, so let's get to that ruling. Essentially, it involved a couple of things. One, of course, the public interest was very high in the case, and he felt that it was the right thing to do. But one of the other bases for his ruling was the issue of COVID, and that people have a right to see these trials, but because of COVID and space concerns, that it was the right thing to do. Now, that situation has changed somewhat. Things have gotten more serious now, so there's an argument to be made that we're still in that same situation. But one of the arguments being made is that that situation, as far as COVID is concerned, no longer exists.
Well, that's true. I mean, it exists, but to a lesser degree. Yes, we have the Delta variant, but here in Minneapolis, specifically Hennepin County, there is a high percentage of people who are vaccinated. So the COVID issue has gone down, but I still think the judge should rely on his previous ruling because you need to have cameras to give transparency in this process. The Chauvin trial proves that.
Now, the claim by the defense, Joe, is that they can't get a fair trial. And they cite a couple of different reasons, one of them being the previous broadcast has so poisoned the jury pool that it's going to be very difficult to find someone who is impartial. Of course, you know, the argument back is that, well, that's what voir dire is for. I want to get your thoughts, and I know you've dealt a lot with different high-profile trials. Do they have an argument here, or should they be concerned that the public sentiment at this point, after the Chauvin trial, is so against the 3 other officers that it's going to be difficult to get a fair trial?
They have somewhat of an argument, but it's pretty weak because I must state that at least here in Minneapolis, and I think throughout Minnesota, people are considering these two trials completely separate. You have Chauvin, who was the actor. He's the person who put his knee on Mr. Floyd's neck. And then you have the three co-defendants. There are two separate standards for that. So I don't think all of the media attention has poisoned the well. And as you aptly stated, Michael, that's what voir dire is for, jury selection. You could weed out the people who have been unduly influenced.
Now, the defense also claims, Joe, that they're having trouble getting witnesses to come in and testify on behalf of their clients. They're saying that the excuses being given by these witnesses is, look at what happened to some of the other witnesses. Dr. Fowler, we also had the expert on police brutality, some of the things that happened to him, and saying, folks are saying to them, we don't want to get involved with this because we're going to be on television and that may affect our careers, et cetera, et cetera. What do you make of that argument?
Well, that's an issue for the defense. There's no doubt about that. They're going to have to look far and wide to try to get their experts. However, people might be hesitant to testify regardless of TV or cameras in the courtroom. Even if this case is closed to cameras, there are still going to be people watching it in court, watching it in separate courtrooms where there would be a remote feed. So the people who testify, their names are going to come out anyway. So yes, it's a problem, but I don't think it's an insurmountable problem.
You know, one of the interesting things that were the arguments that was made in some of the motions in opposition was that the defense in this case filed a motion claiming that there were some issues at trial, but they did not cite the fact that cameras were in the courtroom as one of the reasons why they felt they didn't get a fair trial. The prosecution as well said they thought that cameras might change the way the trial went down, the way lawyers did their job, and they said they were wrong, that in fact they found that that was not the case. You, with all the experience you have, what have you found? What has been your experience in high-profile trials? Do cameras affect the way trials are conducted in courtrooms?
I think they affect this transparency. You are able to give the public a view as to how trials are made, how the sausage is made, so to say. You get to see how people are chosen as jurors. You get to see the full voir dire process. It's very fair. You get to see what happens in the courtroom. And it's the opposite of what people think. People thought, well, if Chauvin's going to be testified, there'll be all this pomp and circumstance and people will be just overly dramatic. The opposite was the case. None of the prosecutors nor the defense attorneys were overly dramatic. It was basically a regular trial.
Now, Joe, the Minnesota Supreme Court has actually rung in on this in favor of cameras. Do you foresee a sea change happening now in Minnesota? Is there a chance that that law might change, that they might have a supposition or a predisposition for allowing cameras in trials?
Yes. All of our courtrooms, state court that is governed by the Minnesota Supreme Court. And they have a committee that's looking into right now whether cameras should be allowed and to what degree. So Judge Cahill and the three other co-defendants has not made a ruling on the case. He just said in due course he will make a ruling. And so what he could be doing is basically waiting for our Minnesota Supreme Court to change the rules, because the trial is not set till March of next year. So there's plenty of time. And hopefully the Supreme Court will change the rules and make it a presumption for cameras in the courtroom.
All right. And so what do you think is going to happen in this case? Do you think we'll get cameras in the courtroom in this particular case?
Yes, absolutely. There's no turning back with these cases. I mean, the cameras need to be there. And I think that Judge Cahill in the end will do as he did in Chauvin's case, which is permit the cameras.
I have to agree with you, Joe. All right, I appreciate you so much, Joe, for coming on the show and giving us that insight, some of the best and most learned insight on this issue. Truly appreciate it.
Thanks for having me on, Michael. Have a good evening.
All right, you too as well. All right, it is almost time for your answers to our talkback question. Now, we asked you on our social media page if you believed Christian Kid Martin's claims of innocence. We'll have some of your responses coming right up, so keep it right here on Court TV. Welcome back to Court TV Live. I'm Michael Ayala. It is time for today's Talkback segment. Each day we post a question on Court TV's social media pages. We gather your comments and questions and respond right here on the show. Today's question was the sentencing of, today was the sentencing of convicted killer Christian Martin. Now, Martin has maintained his innocence since his conviction. So we asked our viewers, do you believe him? All right, still with me, former Department of Justice senior attorney, former federal prosecutor, and federal executive clemency attorney Tammy Allison. And I want to go now to our first comment from Pavan Shah. And he writes, the judge and jury totally fell asleep, and he did not get a fair trial. And you know what, Tammy? So many people feel that way. And again, I don't know if it's just because the folks who feel aggrieved in this case are the ones that are most vocal, so that's what I'm seeing. But clearly, across the line, people think that he did not get a fair trial. He is not guilty of this crime. I'd love to get your thoughts on that. I thought the evidence supported a guilty verdict, although it wasn't the strongest case I've ever seen.
You know, Michael, I'm all about the criminal justice system and making sure that everyone understands that on surface level it works. However, we have processes in place if in fact he did not receive a fair trial, such as appealing the conviction and appealing the sentence. So if in fact people feel that he did not get a fair trial, the person who matters the most is Kit Martin's defense attorney. And I know that he's planning on filing an appeal, and I know he spoke to the network today about his plans to do so. So I'm interested to see how he's planning on laying out any type of case law or statute that can go to the argument that Kit Martin did not receive a fair trial.
Yeah, he's got a number of issues. He outlined the fact that Joan Harmon wasn't made to come into court and take the fifth. He thought that the prosecution mischaracterized some evidence, both video evidence and hair evidence, a couple of other things. So we'll have to see how that pans out. That's never easy. Let's go to our next comment. And not all of our viewers believe Martin is innocent. Helen Jo writes simply, guilty. He got exactly what he deserved. Now, I know you had a chance, Tammy, to watch some of the trial. He took the stand. You also had a chance to watch some of our exclusive interview with him. I want to get your thoughts on the differences there. Did you see a difference in the Kit Martin in the interview and a Kit Martin that took the stand?
You know, the Kit Martin that took the stand, I think his demeanor was a little more mild-mannered and really trying to be persuasive. The Kit Martin during the court TV interview was someone who was trying to essentially plead his own case, to argue his own case to the wonderful Julia Janae. And I just am never a fan of defendants that are convicted, especially, to speak that candidly about their theories of who else could have done it, his weight, his injuries, and why he could not have done it, especially when they've already put their cards out on the table to say that they're going to file for appeal. So why are you showing everybody your play? You don't got to show everybody what you're doing whenever the prosecution knows exactly what the defense attorney is going to argue in his appeal. But again, I do think that there was definitely a different Kit Martin, a Kit Martin that's angry and upset that he did get convicted and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole.
Fair enough. All right. Well, Tammy Allison, I want to thank you so much for being on our show tonight. I know you braved through a couple of things, so truly appreciate you being on it. I want you to have a wonderful evening, all right? And hopefully you'll come back and join us again.
Thank you, Michael.
All right. Have a great one. All right. I'm Michael Ayala. It's been a pleasure being with you as well. Coming up next in closing arguments, Vinnie Politan takes a look at today's sentencing hearing for Christian Kit Martin. So keep it right here on Court TV, your front row seat to justice.
In Christian County, Kentucky, Judgment Day for convicted triple murderer, former pilot Kit Martin, as he is formally sentenced by the judge.
Under Kentucky law,